All right. We are speaking with Atherton Martin, an agronomist from the island of Dominica. And Athi, how are you, my friend?
Well, boy, dealing with all the challenges and working them out, hopefully, in a
Right.
favorable manner.
When I want to get a sense of the Caribbean, I call upon you, the state of of the Caribbean, man, it's and I'm just seeing another situation of the silver shift. It's growing, man. Folks are getting
Hmm.
older, and
Hmm.
there are more challenges than ever. Um,
Yeah.
is that would you say it's a crisis point today in these days?
Well, generally, when we try to identify causes of problems affecting us, we tend to look outside of ourselves. We tend to say, well, it's this guy or that situation or that place. I I want to believe increasingly that the cause of the problem lies within. And it's interesting that in your opening remark you spoke about, people being around for a long time.
Yes, yes.
You know, one of the greatest talents and skills is not only knowing when to go on stage, but when to exit and how to exit to make room for the other actors, the other players in the theater.
Yes.
Um, I'm seeing not only in the Caribbean, but increasingly in Africa, and very interestingly in the United States of America, that there's a growing tendency for people in leadership to perceive that their mandate should extend for as long as they wish. And where people engage in a kind of political buffoonery
Right.
that suggests that nothing good will happen if I am not here. And there's the notion that the presence of a particular leader person, or slightly extended, a particular political movement or political organization, political party, that constitutes the essential ingredient for progress. When in fact it doesn't,
Yeah.
because we are only tools. The political party is a tool. The court system is a tool. The educational system
It's
is
a,
another tool.
yeah.
All of these are tools with which a people can fashion a civilization, fashion a society. We make a big mistake if we believe that we, the leadership or the party, are the tool. And I think that's what we're experiencing. We have a situation in our tiny little region where you have an increasing number of persons who have been in office for 10, 15, 20, going on 25 years,
Right, right, right.
and pretending that that is the outcome of a democratic process. That's a problem because the biology of the universe suggests that there's a beginning, there's a maturing, and there's the termination, making room for the next generation of plants, animals, and people,
Right.
as well as institutions, cultures, and societies. It seems to me that the greatest challenge we seem to face is that we don't quite accept the notion that good things could happen without us. And that suggests a deep flow in our approach to leadership and management of societies. Because the leadership and management of a society is supposed to be laying a foundation from which better things would emerge.
Right,
It's
right.
like a farmer. You prepare a bed for your vegetables, not as the end in itself, but as a means to give a next crop, another crop, a chance to succeed, to do well. The same is true of societies. And for some reason, you're finding people spending more time in office trying to take control over the various critical institutions of the society, the education, the court system, the security system, the media system, as if by controlling more and more of these things, they believe that they will be in a position now to engineer a society. That absence of humility is what strikes me as being the hallmark of a failed approach to leadership. Take the issue of hmm, the economic well-being of a region, of a society, of a culture. Even at a household level, it is true. The principle of delegation of responsibilities, the principle of cultivating and nurturing a subsequent layer of leadership, and so that your children are nurtured to the point where one day, when they have their own households and families, they would have been trained and been in a good position to manage that and not be dependent upon Papa each time. Anytime something goes wrong, they go to Papa.
Yeah,
But you understand that that is precisely the kind of iterative relationship that has been cultivated in our societies. Everything must fuel and filter back up to Papa,
yeah, yeah.
so that whether it's whether it's a road or a school or a healthcare issue, one person must retain the right and the authority to decide what happens there, notwithstanding the fact that the structure of the society, the organization of the governance of the society suggests that there's a delegation of authority to people who presumably have the capacity to manage and organize things. Now, in a world that is free from chaos and free from challenges, in a world without climate change issues, in a world without serious security issues, in a world without serious economic issues, you can understand that it may be possible for a single level of leadership to prevail, where a small group of people can get together and organize and run it. But in today's world, as it has evolved over the last 30 or 40 years, very complex, very interactive, where the actions taken by somebody on the other side of the world is going to have an effect on us here in the Caribbean. Climate change, for example. That requires a level and a type and an approach to leadership and management, no matter how small the society, that is able to take account of these external factors, put them on the table in a sensible and easily understandable way, and use that as part of the decision making process, and not make it appear as if nothing can happen that would work unless Papa is there. And I'm suggesting, when I look at our Caribbean today, and I look at the fact that we have become a region that used to be able to partially feed ourselves. Today, 80% or more of all the food that is consumed in our region is imported from outside of the region,
Right, right.
an area of the world that has a climate and has a history of being able to produce not only enough food for us, ourselves to eat, but a surplus for export, a surplus for converting into preserved and processed foods, so that you have a long-term security of supply. Something went wrong in our region, a region that 30, 40 years ago had something called the Caribbean Food and Nutrition Plan, which took a long view of the Caribbean and said, these items are best produced in Belize. These are best produced in Guyana. These are best produced in Trinidad or Tobago or Jamaica or the Eastern Caribbean. And so let us agree on this fundamental issue of where are we going to place these commodities for production in a way that secures our food supply. A simple thing, but we gave up that thing and we opened up our country to whoever wants to come in and import. Whoever wants to come in and say, no, 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 all your yams and sweet potatoes and dashin and tanya that your great grandfather grew up and did very well, thank you. You know that's not food. Get modern. Your food must now come from a supermarket. That is a fundamental issue of a society which any government system, any governance system that cannot help that society meet that need, that group does not deserve to be the authority in the society. And we have sat by and watched that ability to secure our food supply, something as elemental as that. We have sat by and watched it erode to the point where if there is a serious problem of shipping on the east coast of the United States, we are out of food. If there's a climate issue or disaster in a belt of the United States or North America that interferes with the production of certain items, we have a serious food crisis. That's that dependence on others for something as elemental as food is a serious problem. The same is true of healthcare. We gave up all our natural remedies that used to treat diabetes, treat hypertension, treat wounds, assist in childbearing and birth and so forth. We gave up all these traditional, historical, cultural approaches to medicine and healthcare and replaced it with imported, highly processed pharmaceuticals.
Right, right.
And if, as the COVID crisis demonstrated, if you didn't have the money to purchase those things, your health care evaporated.
Right, right, right.
As opposed, and here you are still in a region where a lot of these herbs, medicinal herbs, grow wild, where there are still people in our midst who know how to
Right.
use those herbs, etc. But you see, I start with those two examples because I believe, they are critical to our capacity, our resilience capacity to withstand not only our internal needs, but the external pressures that are increasingly shaping the world.
Okay, right.
And I believe as long as our leadership keeps avoiding, confronting, dealing with, and managing those challenges, converting them as challenges into opportunities, we actually run in the risk of disappearing as a culture, as a Caribbean culture. Ask yourself,
Yes.
what is it that the Caribbean is known for today? What are the hallmarks of the Caribbean if you travel the world, compared with what the Caribbean was known for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago? What were the skills and talents that we had then that we have lost? What was the sense of identity that we had then that we've lost? What was the depth and diversity of culture and cultural expressions that we had then that we have lost? What about the health care? Our ability to live long and to be healthy and live and work hard, that we have lost because we're succumbing to all kinds of diseases and ailments that are coming by because for some reason the internal strength and wealth of health that came from inside, we've given that up too. So I I I believe if as long as we avoid these basics, feeding, housing, clothing, and caring for ourselves as a people, we will become more and more victims to every passing fancy, every critical crisis, every weather crisis. You know, we would collapse as societies.
Right.
The way forward is to re realign, to realize we have some U-turns that we need to make. U-turns seem to suggest that you were headed in the wrong direction, so you better turn around and head in the right direction.
Right.
U-turns nowadays are not popular because nobody likes to quote unquote admit that they made a wrong turn. But if you don't admit you made that wrong turn, you're never going to get on that right road.
Right.
I believe we've got to start with those basics once again. And that is not heading backwards. Guess what? In 1992, when the Earth Summit was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, the entire world community came to the conclusion that a lot of the things that we used to do well as a human society that we have dropped are what explains our famine, our illnesses, our collapse of society, the order in society, etc. And so even back then, 1992, we had agreed that we needed to do that U-turn. And we came up with all kinds of things, sustainable development goals, the millennium development goals, resilient development goals, all of these things, and spent millions talking about it, but we refused to turn the wheel. And so the Caribbean, which was one of the regions of the world, a micro region, but it was demonstrating that if we could fix things in those small countries like ours, the rest of the world would thereby have laboratory models that they could then transplant and adapt to their bigger landmass and area situations.
Right.
We missed that opportunity. Sadly, sadly, I think it is a reflection of not just the lack of leadership at the governmental level, because no government functions without a support system of public servants, private and other professionals, private and other technical persons, institutions like universities, etc., etc. So we would be courting disaster if we focused exclusively on making change at the leadership level. That change is inevitable once you begin making changes at the ground level.
Right.
And changes at the ground level mean, re, re, if you will, re-engineering or reinstating the capacity for critical thinking, the
Right.
capacity for self-criticism, the capacity for analyzing your local conditions and figuring out what works best for you. And that that is really what ultimately leads to the collapse of bad government, for example. Bad government doesn't collapse in and of itself. They're using everything to stay there as long as they possibly could.
Right.
But
Right.
if the roots of that society say no, enough, we've had enough. You've had 10 years, you've had 15 years, you've had 20 years, you've had 25 years, which is almost a whole generation to show us what you could do, to show us what kind of leadership you're made of. And look at where we are. We are worse off today in the Caribbean. We are more vulnerable today in the Caribbean than we were 40, 50 years ago. And this is after having had people who are highly trained, technically and professionally, in office. But they are proving to be less helpful and less useful than the guys who came out of the trade union movement,
Right, right,
who came
right,
out of the farmers movement,
right,
who came out of the cultural movement and provided the foundation now that led to the Caribbean. Caribbean still was one of the first regions of the world that sought to put together a political federation.
right, right.
Remember the West Indies Federation?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
That was the model the Europeans ended up using to create the European Union.
Right,
But
right, right.
meantime, we dropped it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm hearing that the Prime Minister of one of the OECS countries, Dr. Gonzalez, has predicted the collapse of CARICOM
Right, right, right.
at a time when what is most needed is the consolidation of our joint effort. Hmm? We are busy trying to make sure that we win the next election. Elections won or lost are not what determine the fortunes of a society. It is the strength and capacity of the people built up to build their own society. We've stopped doing that. And that is, to me, the tragedy of our region. We have stopped trying to build. You can't build any structure that will last from the roof down. Any structure that you want to build, you have to consolidate the base. Consolidate the base. Make sure it can withstand all the pushings and shovings and so forth. That will come. But if all you're doing is want to put up a nice roof or a nice fence to impress whom, while the foundation is weak, you got to get back to the basics of building. Nothing grows from the top down.
Yeah, yeah.
You plant a seed, it grows from the ground up.
Right, right, right.
It is
Yes,
instructive. The
yes, yes.
natural system
Yeah,
is there to remind us
right.
of our errors. If we choose not to try to grow from the ground up, what happens? What rots from the head down?
Yeah. Yes.
A
Well,
fish rot.
Ati, yeah. Well, we are out of time, and I would like to call another time, and we will continue for the renewal of
Mm,
all of this. Okay?
absolutely. Okay.
All right, man. Take care. I've been speaking with
So,
Atherton Martin, agronomist from Dominica, as we reflected a bit on the Caribbean and its status as we look at it today. This is Von Martin. Caribbeana continues.